The Trojan from the Iron Age. The Phrygians and the Trojan alliance. Blood and Amber, the siege of the 9th century. I the Spartan merchant king. The wind blew cold from the Hellespont, bringing salty mist and the promise of approaching winter. Menelaus, king of Sparta, gazed into the distance not merely with the fury of a scorned husband, but with the eye of a calculating merchant. This war was no longer the old struggle of Bronze Age heroes fighting with gods, but something new, something rawer. "We are not here for the walls, Agamemnon," he growled to his brother, stroking the hilt of his sword. The weapon was no longer dull bronze, but something harder, though the bulk of the army still wore the old alloys. But for the root. Sparta, a young state barely 2 centuries old, wanted nothing more than to dominate the amber trade route from the Baltic to Greece. The amber jewelry found in Mycenaean tombs reminded them, whoever owns the road, owns the power. In the distance, the walls of Troy towered high. But this was not the Troy the ancients spoke of in the heyday of the Hittite Empire. That empire had long since crumbled to pieces, lost in the storms of the Dark Age, and the power of the Hittites was broken. The current Troy was a solitary city-state, desperately trying to control the strait. To the Phrygian shadow. Unease reigned in the Greek camp. The Trojans were not alone. Phrygians, spat an old warrior by the fire. They say Phorcys and Ascanius lead them. The presence of the Phrygians was the proof no one dared to speak aloud. This was not a battle of ancient times. The Phrygians arrived in Anatolia only in the 12th century and only became a strong kingdom by the 8th century. A scout reported to Agamemnon, "Sir, the Phrygians do not raise stone walls for their dead like the old Hittites. They pile up huge mounds and are buried in timber constructions. We saw such tombs near Gordion." Agamemnon nodded. He knew that the tomb of the Phrygian ruler, Midas' father's massive wooden structure built around 740 BC was the symbol of Phrygian power. If Troy allied with the Phrygians, the Greeks had to unite their forces. That is why Sparta created the new alliance, to break the Anatolian dominance. 3. The voice of women. Deep inside the tent sat Helen, but not as a helpless prize. Her fate bore a haunting resemblance to Michal, King David's wife, who was also taken away and then demanded back in the 10th-9th century. "Kings always use women to measure power," she whispered to herself. "Just as David took back Michal, so too does Menelaus demand me back. Not for love, but for right and honor." Meanwhile, beyond the city walls, in the Trojan palace, the figure of another woman loomed in the mist of the future. Aeneas, the Trojan hero, was already planning his escape. He knew the city would fall. The Hittite defense no longer existed, the walls could not withstand the Greeks' new, united assault. Aeneas' gaze turned westward. Toward a distant shore where a queen fled from Tyre, Dido, was just founding a new city. Carthage, a Phoenician merchant stranded in the Trojan harbor, tasted the name. "Queen Dido lives in the 9th century, my friend. If you leave now, you might still reach her." For the finale. The battle was ultimately not a glorious series of bronze flashes, but a brutal reckoning at the turn of the 9th and 8th centuries. The Greeks, led by the Spartans, broke through. The dawn of the Iron Age was bloody. When Troy was engulfed in flames and smoke obscured the sun, Agamemnon, standing over the ruins, knew, this was not the end, but the beginning. Old Mycenae had long fallen into the dust, but its people survived, and now, at the end of the Dark Age, they had gained new strength. And on the sea, a solitary ship cut through the foam toward Italy. On deck stood Aeneas with the fleeing Trojans, who already spoke a mixed language, preserving the memory of the Hittites. Their journey led not only to Rome but to a meeting with Dido that vindicated the chronology. The fall of Troy and the founding of Carthage were children of the same era, the 9th century. And Sparta opened the gates to trade. The path of amber was free. Author's note on the short story. This story was created based on Anita Bullion's research and Gemini Ace analysis, which date the Trojan War to the Iron Age, the 9th-8th century BC, contrary to the traditional Bronze Age, 13th century BC, theory. The plot weaves together the archaeological arguments found in the document, Phrygian tombs, Spartan trade, parallels of Dido and Michael.